There we go. Excellent. Well, welcome everyone again. I'm Judy Herbst, the Executive Director of Savvy Ladies. I am really excited today to bring you this new series we are working on putting together and introducing you to our two hosts, Miss Shannan Paul, and our partner, financial advisor, Cassandra. Pronounce your last name,
Brashier.
Brashier. Thank you so much. Well, Cassandra and Shannan have worked together in the past. I'm super excited for them to share with you their wisdom, their tips around family finances and how to live a life of abundance, and the tips they're going to share for smart budgeting. So please, let's get started. And Shannan and Cassandra, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Judy. And I'll go ahead and start. So thank you again to everybody that's joining us. And thank you to everybody that's watching us in the replay. I am Miss Shannan Paul, and this is one of my partners, Cassandra Brashier. And so we'll start the conversation with a little bit of background about the two of us. I also want to let you know throughout this conversation, we were going to consider this basically a monopolized dialogue. So Cassandra and I will do a lot of the talking, but if you have any questions as we go, you can feel free to either put them in the chat or use your little icon to raise your hand, and then we'll have time for a Q&A kind of as we go. Cassandra and I have been working together for 8 years, so we know how quickly an hour can go. So we'll also make sure that we at least give you the opportunity to go, here's the resources you can get from the two of us. Here's the resources you can get through Savvy Ladies, because Judy and our Savvy Ladies team will be on the call the entire time. So if there's anything tangible that you need, you can put that information in the chat. We'll make sure you get all of those links. So the other thing I want to remind you, and we'll have this disclaimer as we are continuing the conversation, we do want to let you know a lot of the information we're going to give today hopefully will be very helpful for all of you, but it is not specific information to you. We do encourage you to see a qualified financial advisor or tax accountant or a variety of things that we'll mention throughout the conversation to get your specific information that will most benefit you. And regarding my friend Cassandra specifically, I also want to share the information that her securities and advisory service are offered through Harbor Investment Inc., member FINRA SIPC. I don't have as many disclaimers because I happen to be radio, TV, and solopreneur that hubs out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And basically the way that I got here and why I'm so passionate about the subject matters we're going to talk about during these Savvy sessions is now currently, yes, I am a solopreneur who is working on building her small business to eventually get to the point that not only do I get to support my community, but I also can invest back in my community. But I grew up indefinitely, raised by a single mom, and it was three of us raised by a single mom who worked very hard to make sure that we were taken care of. But it was that subsistence level existence. We're living paycheck to paycheck. I didn't have a lot of modeling as far as what savings looked like, as far as what being financially secure looked like. We went through moments of housing instability and not really understanding how credit worked and a lot of those things when I was younger. And then once I got to my adult years and I was in college, just going, this can't be that hard. There has to be a way that I can learn what all this gobbledygook of letters mean when I'm watching the news, or to figure out a way that I can actually start saving. And as we're going to discuss today, get to be able to make decisions from a position of abundance instead of making them from a position of lack, like I kind of was raised to do. And so the first thing I did was I picked up a book, a Susie Orman book, and just needed to start someplace. And I ended up buying her Young, Broke, and Fabulous book. And that's a really old book now, but it really was my entry into being able to do this. And then throughout my career, I've been very fortunate to be able to partner with some very wise people. And Cassandra Brashier from Avila Wealth is one of those people. She and I have been co-hosting a financial advice show on a Twin Cities radio station that you can also find the podcast for the last 8 years, right? So I tell people, yeah, and I tell people all the time that I get to make better decisions as a fully adulting human being because I'm friends with family attorneys and financial advisors, and that when I'm when the world is throwing things at me, I can go back and go, does this really make sense? And where am I going? So now I will turn it over to Cassandra and give her a chance to kind of tell you how she got into this industry and her wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, thanks, Shannon. Yeah, Shannon and I, we have a lot of fun working together. So when she brought this to my attention and introduced me to Savvy Ladies, I was very excited about both the organization and, of course, working with Shannon because we always have fun. And so my background, I have a mother who is a financial advisor as well, and so that was my introduction to money and finance and learning some of those concepts growing up. But I didn't always see myself as an advisor. It really wasn't until I was in college. I got a major in psychology, but at that time, I had a life-changing experience where my parents went through a divorce, and money was actually at the center of one of the major issues that caused that. And when that happened in my life, it really showed me how big of an impact money can have on a marriage, on a family when it's not in order. And so as much as I loved psychology and helping people and understanding human nature, I thought this is the industry I need to go in because I need to know that I can help take care of my own family and I want to help other families out there, other people with their finances because I know how important it can be. So that was my path into the financial industry 20 years ago, and it's been a wonderful road, a wonderful journey, and I really do enjoy the educational side of it to try and help give and empower people and especially women out there because I know from being in the industry 20 years there are so many more men in the industry than there are women. And I think sometimes it is wonderful to be able to have that female connection with someone that sometimes I just feel more comfortable talking to women about certain things. And I feel more comfortable asking questions to women about certain things. So if that resonates with you, I know that's one of the reasons I really like connecting and working with women in the industry. So, all right, Shannon, should we
Fantastic.
show on the road? Should we talk about budgeting and
Yes, and for anyone, so Liliana, we did see your question in the chat. I'll make sure I get that information. We'll put that in there as soon as we can. But for everybody that's joining us right now, if you wouldn't mind, just to help us frame the conversation, Judy was kind enough to give us some questions that were posed just basically to the website. But just to get an idea of who's joining us today, if you want to, as I said, I'm a single mom, I'm divorced. And so we just to kind of have an idea of who's joining us. If you don't mind, if you're comfortable sharing, just where you're from, what your status is, and if you have a family, if you want to let us know how many kids you have, we would love to kind of see that because it'll help us kind of frame this budgeting question, this conversation, because we know that it changes a lot based upon some of that circumstances. But yes, Cassandra, if you want to go ahead and start and share your slides as we are waiting for people to go ahead and respond to that particular prompt, we will get the conversation started. So yes.
All right. Can you see it?
Yes.
All right. Awesome. Well, let's get started. I think this will be a lot of fun. This will be, I'm sure it'll fly by. The hour is going to fly by. So here we go. So let's talk about budgeting. There are so many things that you can do with your money. Obviously, we all know that, right? It could go a million different directions. So how do you gain control of your money and have it be an intentional process when it comes to what you're doing with your money? And that's where this whole conversation about having a budget comes in. And so when you're looking at putting a plan in place for your finances, that's really why you would start with a budget, because that's the foundational piece for being able to do anything else financially. You really have to have a handle on some of the basics when it comes to cash flow, as far as how much is coming in on a monthly basis, what's going out, where is it going, and is it going to places that are important for it to go to? So I think just sitting down and starting to have some eyes and some attention on your money is a great first step. And it might seem so overwhelming at first, right, Shannon? I know we have people that talk about like, it's just overwhelming. I don't know where to start. So I think just being able to have just to start anywhere you start, like you say, like you said, I just picked up this book because it was a good starting point. Wherever you start in this process of trying to create a budget will put you in that motion of getting it done. And so I think whatever those first steps look like, and we're going to give you a bunch of ideas on ways to do that. But that budget is such a great piece to focus on and work with. And I know when people really get a sense of control over their cash flow, it is so empowering.
Right.
Would you agree, Shannan?
Right. And we were talking about, when you use the word budget, a lot of people get very cringy preemptively. And like the same way as when we tell people, well, maybe you should go on a diet, they're like, oh, it's going to be really restrictive. It's going to be really
Right.
painful. It's going to be arduous. It's going to be hard. And that's a lot of the feedback that we get when we start talking about budgeting. So I'm glad that so many people chimed in during this conversation, because we both come to the position of going, no, having a budget is empowering. Like just
Mm-hmm.
being able to have the knowledge to go, I can do this little thing is very impactful. And it's like
Right.
you just said, Cassandra, it's starting where you are. And so a lot of the way that we consider people should start, and thank you for everybody that's put their information in the chat. Um, we know, especially when we're looking through here and we're seeing, like you're a divorced single mom, you have kids that are in college, we have people that are small business owners and people that are working for other people. And so we know that time is at a premium. We're both in the same boat as you. We're both busy moms that are trying to work and get through all these things. And so a lot of when we say start wherever you are, wherever your bank account is, just maybe just getting better at actually looking at it. And especially these days, I'm a
Mm-hmm.
gamer. So I like to gamify things, and we've talked about that. So for me,
Yeah.
being able to live in an app, I'm like, cool, that makes sense for me. I like being able to live in that. I like having it at my fingertip, literally, to be able to go, all right, here's what we look at. Because I remember my mom would have a checkbook, and so you would get used to writing it down and doing math. But now, because money is just numbers that float around out in the ethosphere, it's
Right.
really going, well, what's going to be my process so that I know what it is? And then
Mm-hmm.
when I got accustomed to looking at it and really seeing where the money was going out, it made it easier for me to go, well, I need to make sure, even when I was in my paycheck to paycheck days when I first started, it was looking at, okay, I had at that time just taken out a sheet of paper, and I still have it. I got myself a notebook and I just started someplace and I said, here's what I'm spending. So I may only have, like back then, I only had like maybe like $25 wiggle room sometimes. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do with that $25? So we really want to remind everybody that there's never too little. It's still what's important to you. And that $25 is a big deal. And if you're able to make that $25 work for you, and that's what you're starting with, it
Mm-hmm.
feels great. Like the fact when I first started that, and I was steadily putting that $25 away every month. When it first got to $500, I'm like, this is the first time in my life I ever had $500 just sitting someplace in case I needed it. And if I hadn't started with that 25, that 10, that 5, whatever it was, I wouldn't have gotten to that first 500 that helped me get to the next 500. So I do think that that's really a good way for you to start, when we're saying, um, we get it that it feels like incredibly daunting, and the radio station that Cassandra and I work at is an entertainment talk station. So we spend a lot of time talking about rich celebrities. And so a lot of the information is people are like, well, that doesn't work for me. That's for a Kardashian. We're like, no, this is for you in Seattle. This is for you in Ohio. This is for you when you're in Brooklyn. Like all you deserve the same advice on your level that these people got, because that's how they got there, is finding the right advice and having somebody like the Savvy Ladies team or Cassandra Brashier talk to you and go, no, you deserve to know what all this stuff means. And we can
Mm-hmm.
get you to a goal. And then once we get to that first goal, we can get to the next one. So, all
Mm-hmm.
right, now back to you, Cassandra, what we have on the slide and, and talking about, you know,
Yeah.
those kind of recommendations and what we talked about, like we'll ping back and forth about how we manifest some of these things and what it actually looks like and where some people might actually be able to go, this is the option that works best for me.
Right, right. And before you actually get to the budget, what I would recommend is taking some time and doing a little bit of dreaming and a little bit of goal setting. And if you haven't done that before, it might seem a little bit awkward. I know sometimes when we do something new, it feels a little bit uncomfortable and a little bit awkward at first. But I'll tell you what, if you can put some things down that really get you excited, that you can feel really passionate about, that if you can envision accomplishing or getting to a certain point, and then what it would feel like and how you would feel, whether it's a certain amount of money saved, or whether it's getting out of some debt that you have, or whether it's being in a different house, or having a certain car, or being able to cover certain things for your children or your family, or going on certain vacations, whatever motivates you or whatever is important to you, if you can get those things down and be clear about them, that's what can actually help make it easier when you're doing your budget, because you have a purpose. Your budget has a purpose. It's not just, like Shannan said, it's not just a restrictive plan that you've made for yourself. It's actually an empowering plan that will help you get to some of these important things that you're trying to get to. So if you have those things that will drive you and motivate you, like I said, I have a degree in psychology. This is a key piece that will help you with your budgeting, to have things that you get excited about, because then when we go to some of these next steps that we talk about, that's what will help you to stay focused day in and day out, and keep working on some of these things that you've maybe never done before in your life, that are going to be changes. Because how many of us, change is not that easy.
No, no.
That it is not that easy, right? What do they say? It takes like 28 days to create a new habit, or whatever it is. So can you imagine that if something you're trying to do, it's pretty difficult, if you don't have a really good, strong reason and some things that you can have your eyes set on as things to push you forward, how it might be easier to not keep going with something new. So that's why I think it's so important to have some of those goals and those dreams that you write down, and don't think that things are out of reach. Even if you don't accomplish them in the amount of time that you set, you still may be able to accomplish them. That's what's pretty neat about goal setting, is sometimes the time frame doesn't work out, but it doesn't mean that those goals aren't accomplishable.
And I think it's also good when you're setting those goals is to build your support system. And this is when I think it's also really good to have those. It's a good conversation to have about setting those boundaries, because not everybody in your life is your support system for your
That's a
kind of
good
dreams and your
point,
goals.
right?
Not
You do not
everybody
want to share your goals with people that are not going to be supportive of them.
Exactly. If you've got some of those hole poking friends or family members, they don't have to know about your goal, because they'll just get in your way. Like when I started setting my most recent financial goals, I told Cassandra, because she's my friend and my financial advisor, but I didn't tell my mom. My mom is a continual hole poker. And so I'm like, I love her. She loves me. She doesn't get to be involved in this conversation, because she's just going to like nitpick it, instead of me going, no, I picked it thinking I can get there. I just haven't exactly figured out how to get there yet.
Mhm.
But you don't need somebody immediately derailing your dream. But it might be your significant other. It might be your kids, where you can all dream on this together. It might somebody that's in your, your best friend, but it might not be it might not be your friend, Sarah or whoever it is, because Sarah is working on her own stuff. So
Yep.
it's really finding those core people that you can go, nope, I get it. And that can champion you just like you can champion yourself.
Mm-hmm. Because sometimes those people need to challenge you a little bit and help you to stretch even further.
Right.
So it's good. You want people, share your goals with people that are going to be supportive. So that's before the budgeting starts. Do that exercise. That will be such a great use of time. So once you know where you're trying to go, now really focus on the cash flow side of it. And the first part of that is just looking at what is all coming in to your account on a monthly basis. And that's from any sources of income. So it could be, maybe you have a job, maybe you have a side hustle and you've got some money that's 1099 income, or you have a business, or maybe you're getting child support or alimony, or maybe you're on disability, or maybe you have a pension and you're close to retirement, and you are retired and you're on Social Security, or you're drawing investment income from interest and dividends. So just whatever the sources of income is, and there's obviously a whole host of other things that aren't listed. That's the first step, is just looking at how much is coming in on a monthly basis. So that's number one. Then the next thing is, once you know what is all coming in, we can move from there. Now, some people don't have a consistent, predictable income, and that's
Right.
understandable. because you might be an entrepreneur, right? Or you might have a business, or maybe you just work different hours each month. Do your best, right? Do your best. See if you can average things out as best as you can. Or if you have certain months that are, are typically higher than others, just do your best with what's coming in.
And
Or
back
if
to
you know what your annual is typically.
that, yeah, and I was going to say that as well. When you're doing with your annual, for a lot of people, when we're having that conversation about where do you start, now this time of year is usually a good time to start if you've never really done it before, because you're getting everything together for your taxes anyway.
Right.
And
Right.
so for me, that's really where I was like, the one time a year that I really knew at the beginning where things were was around this time of year, because I was forced to sit down and really collect everything and look at it, and then look back at the past year. And practicing that way with that information helped me get better at looking forward. So
Yeah.
it did take me, honestly, a couple of years. Cassandra will tell, it took me a couple of years of really just going, well, here's what the tracking was. And I did it. And every year I'd go, best of intentions, I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to stay on it this year, and I'd be fine April, May, June. And then by July, life started happening. And then by November, I'm like, I don't know where I'm at again. But I at least had a place to come back to go, this is where I start. And then I'm like, all right, then I put in the process, and we'll get to that. Some of the processes that we suggest. Once you go, all right, I know in general what I'm making. Here's some ways to kind of stay in front of it and make some decisions going forward once you know that information, basically.
But you and I have both had the experience, I know, of you set a goal. And I know, and for us, I'm talking specifically about, like, we had income goals where I remember coming up on the end of the year and looking at what I earned that year and thinking, how did that happen? Like, it was more than I expected, right?
Right.
Like, I had done so much better than I thought. But I had set a goal for it, but I had no idea I had hit the goal.
Right.
Or I was beyond the goal. That's happened too certain years. And so I think that's why goal setting can be so amazing. It's, if you don't set those goals, you'll plug along still, but if you set those goals, it's a lot more likely that even if you don't reach the goal, you'll get so much further along.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
highly recommend that for people. Okay, so we talked about what's coming in on a monthly basis. Now what we need to do is look at what's going out. So that's a matter of just looking at where are you spending your money usually? Is it on a credit card? Is it from your bank accounts? Or if you're using cash, that's a little more tricky, but you could just have some kind of tracking system where you're taking notes and writing things down, or however you wanted to track it. But just having some kind of system where you can look at what's going out on a monthly basis. And like I said, a lot of times it is easier nowadays than it's ever been, because we can just pull up our credit card statement and it lists every single transaction, or pull up our bank statement and it lists every single transaction of what's going out. And there's so many tools and things that are out there too, which I know, Shannon, you're going to talk about in a second here, but have the mentality, or I would recommend anyway, having the mentality of you are a CEO, you're a president, you are a CFO of your financial household. And so to have an approach of authority, of confidence, of empowerment, like I said, to really just take control of your financial situation, even if you don't know all the answers.
Right.
Just like we said, start moving in that direction.
Right. And Judy just put in some great calculators and some tracking information in the chat for everybody, for a great place to start if you're not already using some app or accomplished it using whatever it is that your financial institutions have.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. So the next step then is taking a look at all the different transactions and making decisions. Now, there's going to be some things you have to have, right? Your rent or your mortgage or your living expense. Okay, you have to have something, right? But you could look at, if you're renting somewhere or if you have a mortgage, is it where you want to be? Is the house too big, too small? Is it the right fit? So maybe that does need to be something that you address, but maybe it's not the first thing you address. So, but just look at all the different things. You and I talk about, oh my gosh, the subscriptions kill you, right?
Oh,
it's like
subscriptions.
They get you, or you get the first 3 months free. And then how many of us forget to like cancel it? I am so guilty of that. That's why I'm always so hesitant to do anything like that. Cause I think, yeah, but I'm not going to remember to cancel it. So
But it really
anything like
does,
that.
like, back to making a decision from empowerment and abundance versus doing it from a position of lack. When I go through my regular, I call it my subscription hunt, where I'm like, what am I paying for? Kind of thing that I'm not
Yep.
using. It doesn't make me feel bad that I'm turning off a thing I'm not using, because it's not like it used to be back in the day where if you signed up, you got some big discount for keeping a thing. If you're in a time in your life where you're not really using your Netflix
Mhm.
account, turn it off, because then when you
Yeah,
do have time, turn it back on.
they will
It's
take
not
you back.
exactly. They will be happy to get your money back again when you feel like, yeah, I feel like spending this $13 to $17 a month.
Right.
I go through phases where I'm working or I'm doing something with my kid or it's going to be summer vacation. There's no point in me having it. And then sometimes the longer I have it turned off, the longer I'm like, you still don't have time to use it. So
Right.
why are you going to keep it?
Yeah.
So when you're looking at those things, and I always encourage people to do this. It feels like it's not much money when it's $17 a month. Whatever that subscription is, multiply it by its 12 and then multiply it by its 24 and look at that dollar amount. And then it
Mhm.
feels like a lot. And I'm like, gosh darn it, why am I giving them,
Right.
$300?
Yep.
Then I'm like, what could I be doing to put that $300 to work for me? That's how you make those small things feel
Oh my gosh.
tangible, you
Yeah.
know?
You and I both we would ask each other about Sirius XM. Remember when we were
Yes.
both like, "Oh, we got to cancel that. Did you cancel it yet? No. Did you know?" And we kept checking up. And how many months went by where both of us were like, "Gosh, we didn't cancel that." That
And
was
then
like
finally, we
25 or
both were like, do it.
$29. Yes. So all those little things that just eat away at your budget. You look at it. Is that thing more important than whatever goals you had set for yourself? And that's a good bar to look at. Is this expense more important than that thing in the future, or is it less important? And the things that are less important, like you said, Shannon, maybe you get rid of them for a time. Doesn't mean you don't have to go back to them. I
Right.
remember when you had some really significant goals you were working towards, and you were like, "Hey, I'm not getting my nails done first time."
No,
And
no.
then you were like, "Okay, I'm doing it again now," but I didn't do it for a time because I was really working on some things. And
I
so,
just was like, where can I find this money? And that was one of the
yeah,
places, because I needed to, for me, it was I had went through a lot of work to buy my house. And to do it, because I'm a solopreneur and an independent contractor, I had to take all my deductions out the year I bought my house. So that used up all my cushion that I had spent
yeah,
so much time saving. So I'm like, I need a cushion. And I didn't have a cushion when I first started my business. And I spent a lot of time. It was a journey building up my cushion.
yeah,
So I want to be honest and transparent with everybody out there. It was work and I was intentional about it. And so having to like wipe that out to buy my house, it totally was a good investment, but it was frustrating. And so I said, for the next, however long it takes to build that cushion back up, I'm not going to pay anybody to do my hair and I'm not going to pay anybody to do my nails. And I just figured something else out. Those are the two things that I was like, nope, this is more important to me. And then by the time I got my cushion back up, I put my hair back in. Like I have a hair appointment tonight. So don't even lie. I'm like, I get to, that's one of the things that is my priority. That's a me thing that I'm like, I do that. Once a month, I go sit down, I get my hair done. But I did get better at doing my nails and it actually was more cost effective. It actually worked into my business strategy more because I do need to show up and look a certain variety of professionals. So as shallow as it seems, it actually does make a difference for what I do.
Mhm.
But it actually, because I got better at it, not only did I save myself money, it actually gave me more freedom because now I can have it be like some crazy color. But if I need to change it to something because I have a client that books me for something where I can't have some really obnoxious, like there's butterflies on this finger. If like, well, that would be inappropriate for what I have to do. I can change it,
Yeah,
in an evening at my house. So I'm not saying everybody needs to like, we've talked about other things to save money when people start a garden. Maybe that's not your jam.
yeah.
Maybe you're not going to make
I
your own
kill
bread.
every plant. I try to.
Yeah,
I
exactly. So maybe every option like that to free up money in your budget and increase your cash flow doesn't work for you, but maybe one of these things
Yeah.
will. Yeah.
And
So that's it.
you never felt like down on yourself that
No.
you weren't doing your nails. You
Mm-mm.
were empowered, right? Because that was a choice you made. So that's the difference in taking charge of things and making those decisions. Because
Right.
you're choosing to do it. You didn't have to do it.
Correct.
Chose to do it. So um then you look at once you've cut out really or made those intentional decisions, you may not have that much extra still, like you said, Shannon.
Right.
So then it really is a matter of, how do you make more? How are you going to earn more then? If you have really cut as much fat or whatever you want to call it out of your financial budget, it just might come down to needing to earn more money. So either it could be adding something part-time. Maybe you don't have time for that though. Maybe looking at other jobs that might pay more. Sometimes people we're so ingrained in what we do that we don't sometimes lift our head up to look at what other options might be out there. So try to use your creativity to find ways that you might be able to earn additional income. What are your skills? What are you good at? What kind of value could you provide to be able to earn some additional income?
And for anybody, for our folks in there who are the solopreneurs like me, back to our overall subject matter, what it did is empowered me to be more intentional with holding my rate. And going, I set my rate for a certain reason. This is the kind of things that I'm trying to book. These are the kind of clients that I'm going to invest in getting, and so
and even increasing it when it was appropriate, right?
Correct. I did need to increase it, and it made me go, no, because I was able to go back to that goal and that financial goal and go, no, this is why these things are going up. So back to when we're looking at our overall budget, these things are going up. I do deserve to say this. And I didn't triple my prices, but I did slowly eke them up based upon what was going on in the rest of the economic universe. So,
and who balked at it? Did anyone balk at that?
No, only a couple of people, and the couple of people who did, then we figured something out, but not to the point, not to the point that I'm going, okay, I needed to, oh my gosh, I made a mistake. It was more of
no, it's usually in our own head, right? It's that voice in our own head saying, you can't, you shouldn't, you won't be able to do it. We've got to, this is just human nature, right? It's not like any of us can, I don't know that there's a way to ever completely get rid of that voice.
Right.
So it's just, again, having those goals, having that focus, and having people that can help support you and surround you and help you to elevate to the next level. I think that's why Savvy Lazies is so important, because it is a great source of support and education and resources and tools for women to be able to take those next steps financially.
And understand that you deserve it. And it's like, you're not making it from a position of, oh, I need to be smaller, or I need to take on more of these things, or they're going to tell me no. It's going, no, I need it to be this way for me to be able to make this goal. It helps you really settle in to being able to go, no, this is why my rate is the rate it is, and finding other people, like using some of these calculators, like, well, I need this many gigs to do this. I need this much. I need to make this much money every month to do Y. And so it does help you make those decisions and go, well, is this really a good return on investment of my time? If it's not, then it's easier to go, well, I'm not going to do it. I need to be able to spend time. And, back to, since so many people were mentioning in the chat that they were caretakers and they have families, your time with your family is valuable. So figuring out a way that you can maximize because there's only like, sometimes you can't go to your boss, because we read about all the time, go to your boss and tell them to give you more money. We know that that's not always a thing that can do. But
it is a conversation that might be worth having.
Exactly. So at least give it a shot, before you presume they're going to say no. If they say no, then you can go, okay, well, where else can I find this time? And what am I going to use my emotional, I like the word, the concept of emotional calories. Where am I going to put my emotional calories then? If I only have so many of them to spread throughout the week and the day.
So, right. Yes. And you got to use some of them on yourself too.
Correct.
So here are some different ways then to track, right? I have used a pen and paper in the past, because that I love to be able to write things down, cross things off, add to my list. That system works for me. I know it's not the most advanced, but I know I have clients that will show me their Excel spreadsheets that they have for their budgets and things, but there are a lot of apps. So Shannan, I know you have looked into that.
Yes. And so I'm an app-based person. I like apps. I like being able to look at them, and especially ones that work out really well. I was a big proponent of Mint. And then since Mint went away, what I'm trying, because I've been kind of like just poking in some different ones. So the one that is the best for me right now is app. And Judy, if you guys have an app and I didn't know it, let me know, because we haven't been working with Savvy Ladies as long. For me, Quick and Simply is the one that I've been using. And that's the closest to what Mint did for me. I know I have some friends that have had great success with Rocket Money. So if you're a person that needs to go, where are all my subscriptions, and I need help canceling them. That's why, I think Rocket Money works for that kind of thing.
Okay.
But the thing about Rocket Money is that Rocket Money will take a portion of whatever money they save you in order to get it done. So
Oh,
really,
interesting.
it's for people that just can't tell. Like Cassandra and I are both very good at, like, we said no, turn it off.
Yeah.
And we make jokes about our Sirius XM satellite one because they're one
Oh
of
my
those places
gosh.
where they won't just let you just go click a buttons. You got to talk to a person. And so we both went through our journeys of, no, really, turn it off, turn it off, turn it off, turn it off. So for us, if you're one of those people that that you're gonna succumb to whatever sales pitch they have, maybe Rocket Money's good for you, because there'll be a lot more likely to go, we didn't come here for your sales pitch, we came here to turn this off. And so yeah, so I agree with you. So there are a lot of them that it's finding the one that has the right fee. I usually suggest, especially unless it's something that integrates, like I know we have some people that are like me that are small business owners, unless it's something that integrates into whatever you're using and there's a reason why it's costing you a premium, I look for the ones that the annual fee isn't going to cost me more than like 50, 60 bucks a year. That for me is doable and makes sense for the functionality and why I need it all in one place.
Sure.
There's some other ones that might be closer to like the 200 or the $100 range. I don't, from my experience, because I like Cassandra knows this about me. I like dabbling in the way to see how apps work for the functionality of what they do. I don't think any of them, for my, mom with one, with one kid, that I don't think that the value of any of them is worth that price point for what they do. And the reason why I like the apps is that if you're trying to broaden into, I have a checking and a savings, I also have a couple of investment accounts, I have this, and you want something to aggregate it all into one place, that's where I think there's a value with these apps. So you can go, I entered the information on, what my mortgage is, what my car payment is, all that stuff, and being able to have one place that tracks them all for you. I do think that the apps are of great value for that. So Judy, what's the general savvy ladies concept of using those app-based budgeting tools?
No, I think you're absolutely correct. It is a personal preference,
Mhm.
but we like to say, be very mindful if you're using them, because they are just like a gym membership. Many of these apps have a cost,
Correct.
and you might go into them not recognizing it has a cost, but all of a sudden you're going to be budgeting. And if you're doing a budgeting worksheet, it could then cost you an extra $15 to $20 a month to have these budgeting apps. So
Mhm.
it's really being mindful of adding that to your budget. I would say to start out with, you don't need to use a budgeting app, and then see if you do need it to keep you going and tracking
Right.
you as you go along.
Mhm.
And then, of course, we want to just be mindful of scams out there. So
Yes.
when you're doing your budgeting apps, you're not giving them your account information, but you're putting in the numbers for them to calculate. So you might want to just start out with those budgeting calculators that you can find that are free,
Mhm.
and kind of see where you're going. And I think the biggest thing around a budget, Shannon, is it's kind of organic, and it changes because your needs are going to change every quarter. It could change, it could be back to school, and your needs are going to change because you need money for back to school books and supplies for the kids, or around holiday time the budgets are
Yep.
going to change. So think of the budget as something that's organic, that's going to go with you. So you don't sticking to a monthly that's going to be the same every month might be difficult, and really not really appropriate and your lifestyle. So I want to say it's a lifestyle
Right.
that is
And
going
Mhm.
so
together.
I think it's also a matter of just what's the best tool that you're going to use now with, back to like the conversations of Excel spreadsheets and things, because things can live in a cloud and you can pull them up on like a Google Doc or a Google Sheet or something. It does, I think, make it a lot more or less time consuming, but also a lot more accessible, because before you go, well, am I going to really take this whole thing with me? Sometimes you can go, well, before I make this decision, like, am I going to buy this thing, whatever it is, you can at least pull up your sheet and go, yeah, I probably can. I can move something around. And knowing that you can do that is back to what we're saying about being able to make decisions and go, well, am I going to pull the trigger on this purchase early because there's a sale going on? Am I going to save myself enough money that it's worth doing it now? Or should I continue to save towards it because I'm not close enough and I really don't have it in my budget right now? And I think that that also being able to have that overall access helps you do that as you're continuing to make decisions.
Yep.
I think you're right. I'm going to throw a question out to everyone on the call. Are any of you using something that you want to share? Is there one way that you're doing it that is working for you, or you found that you shift? You can write it in the chat, or you could raise your hand. Love to hear if there's something you would like to share around budgeting.
While they're putting their questions in, if you want to go to your next slide, Cassandra, then you can go to some of these questions too.
Yeah. And I know, well, and you and I, we get questions all the time. What's the best, right? What's the best this? What's the best that? And really, back to your point, Judy, everyone's budget is going to be so personal. And same thing, whatever you use to track or your system for having a budget, the one that works for you is going to be the best one. So,
but you should,
not one size fits all.
Yeah, it's whatever you're gonna use. You know, for me, I was going to use that one, QuickBooks. Yeah. So Gabby said QuickBooks for business. Yes. For me, the other reason why Mint worked for me is I liked getting little like notifications. Hey, good job. You stayed on what you said you were gonna do. Or it was really good at sending those reminders of think about it reminders. And so I think that's some of the benefit of certain apps too, like Rocket Money will do that, you know, so it does help. So we're saying, sorry, this is a question, but you need to link your accounts to the app so you can count up your spending. The thing is, I'm different about using their secure networks that link the accounts versus me giving too much personal information. Like some of them, if they want full access to every single thing about me, like I always like to look through the app store and to just see what people think about how things are linked. And so there are more secure ways for some of these apps than others. So that's back to what I think it's good for you to keep track of which of those you're using, and make sure that it's a verified, trusted app in either the iOS store, in the Apple store, or in Google store, Google Play. I'm not big on let's use the brand new thing, the new hotness that's out there. I'm like, what's the verified ones? What's maybe someone that Forbes has already used, like people that have been tried and true and tested and are linked to something, like Mint was linked to Intuit and those type of things. So being mindful of those when you're using it as well is where's your data going and how safe and secure are the connections with that information. I've heard of Copilot. I haven't used that one. I'm curious. We'll have to look that up. So cool.
Great. So when you're looking at your budget, this is a big question that a lot of times people will have is how much should I be putting towards my debt? How much should I be? I don't have a savings, or I don't have enough in savings in like your actual emergency fund or savings account, or should I be putting some money towards my investments? So people have, when they talk about budgeting, sometimes these are some of the big questions people have. So when it comes to an emergency fund, a good goal is to have between 3 to 6 months of whatever your monthly expenses are. Now, you may not have anything right now, and that's okay. So I would say if you're starting from zero, start working towards $1,000, right? However long that's going to take, work towards that first goal. Then you can work towards maybe 1 month of expenses, then maybe 2, right? So just start with a goal that you feel is doable, that you can work towards. But the end goal would be having somewhere between 3 to 6 months of your expenses, not necessarily your income, but your expenses. Now, maybe your expenses and your income are the same right now, but that's where, again, knowing what your budget is, knowing what your expenses are can really be helpful, because that can tell you exactly then what that emergency fund number could look like. So now some people are really good savers and they have accumulated a whole lot in their savings, but they don't know what to do with it. There might be other places that you could be allocating some of that just to have a better some better positioning, just have some options that could help set you up for some other things down the road. So those are a lot of times, those are the two extremes. Either people have to build up to something or they have a whole lot in there and they're not sure what to do with it.
Right.
But the thing to know is that you may also have some debt. And if you have debt, and we're going to talk about that in a second here, but I do recommend building up your emergency fund little by little, even while you're paying down your debt. Because how many of us have had an emergency happen? I know, I'm like multiple. Like I feel sometimes it's like one after another. How many of us think that the next emergency is going to wait until we build up our emergency fund?
Right.
I mean, so if we don't have an emergency fund, though, where are we going to go to cover that next emergency? And often it's debt, right? Whether it's we put it on a credit card or we have to take it out of our, even if it's out of other investments that we have that might be for retirement, or we have to borrow it from someone. It puts us in a place of having to scramble and have more stress financially. So if you can start even little by little building up that emergency fund, that way at least you should have something next time. But that's why you want to do it simultaneously while you're paying down debt, because emergencies don't happen until it's convenient for us, right? That's kind of the nature of emergencies.
Right.
They don't announce themselves ahead of time. They don't send out a notification. So
Right.
that's why do them both, right? Do them both simultaneously. And then if you have a good amount that you have saved, a high yield savings account can be a really nice tool to use. And there's a lot of them online that will have 4 to 5% right now that you can have a good amount of interest accumulating, and have it linked right to your bank account that you can then move the money back and forth as you need to. So those are just a few things I think on in your budget. Have some amount that's going towards an emergency fund if you don't have that much built up at this point. Shannan, anything you want to add on that?
No,
No, but I
think
love what you said about finding a high yield savings account. Can you talk a little bit about what that means and how to find that? Can everyone search online to find it? And then what is safe and what's not safe?
So here's what I would say too, is that sometimes even because there's so many different ones out there. Synchrony is one that's been around for a long time. I think Discover has one. Goldman Sachs used to. I haven't looked to see if they still have theirs. I'm guessing they do. I'm trying to think.
I think they do because my sister just asked me about theirs.
I think Citi or Capital One, actually, someone was just telling me about they use Capital One. What I would say is NerdWallet does a pretty good job of vetting and giving lists of things that are financial, whether you're looking at what's a good credit card based on like different perks or things that might be valuable to you, right, to use. And again, credit cards are only good if they're paid off every month, right? Now, I know sometimes we need to use them. Again, maybe it's for that emergency, or maybe it was this time in your life that was so difficult and that's all you could do and you were just trying to get by. That all makes sense, right? We have to do that sometimes. So if you're in a place of debt, don't beat yourself up about it. I would just say, get a plan in place, right? Get a plan in place to pay it off. But when it comes to the high yield accounts, Judy, NerdWallet usually has really good rankings and lists of some of the top ones to use. The one thing I would say is look, they should be right in that 4 to 5% range right now based on interest rates. So that's what I would look for in those high yield savings accounts, is that they should be in that range right now. Now they're going to fluctuate. So when the interest rates, if they start lowering this year or next year, when they start doing that, it will come down. They will fluctuate with the interest rates of the market, or the Fed funds, right? But at this time, it's nice that you can just have it sitting in a savings account and get 4 to 5%, because most banks do not offer anywhere near that.
No.
So you might have your bank savings might be like 0.2%.
Yeah.
You know.
And then once I, started working on that and I filled up that, I called it my cushion. So once I had that set up, then it was a matter of going, well, where is the best way to put the money to work in these other places? So it was starting putting some in this savings account. And
Yep.
then it was, we had that conversation about how certificates of deposits like CDs were, at least the short-term ones were really silly high for what they were in comparison to what they were doing before. So looking at some options that used to be kind of old school that weren't good options, but because we're in such like, because the finance world is kind of swimming like this in comparison to what it used to do, some old school options now have a better rate than they used to, that it's worth going, okay, I'm not going to need this for 6 months. I'm going to get a pretty good return on it. Let's go ahead and look at this option.
Right. But for some people, I would probably, given the rates today, because they're still at 4 to 5%, maybe you'd get 5.5 in a CD, right? Or you might get in the shorter term ones. The longer term ones aren't going to be as high
No.
as the shorter term ones are right now. However, I think the flexibility of the high yield accounts are they're just very favorable, right? Because like we said, we don't know when the next thing is going to happen. So unless this is not money that you would tap into in the case of an emergency, I would probably opt for the high yield over a CD, because CDs, you still might be able to get the money out and get a good interest rate on it, but it might be a little bit harder to get the money out, right? You might, because you're basically agreeing to a period of time. So if something happens within that period of time that you do need it, like I said, if you have another cushion where you shouldn't need it and it shouldn't be an issue, that's different. But if that is your emergency fund, I probably wouldn't put your actual emergency fund in a CD, if that makes sense.
Right.
But CDs definitely can have a place, and sometimes I use them in portfolios and things for people, but usually not for an emergency fund itself.
Right. And Cassandra, someone in the chat had mentioned that they found one, but the reviews were bad about getting money out of it when you need it. So that's a lot of what we were saying too, is read the reviews,
Yep.
kind of thing. Like,
Yep.
and if somebody says nope, it seemed like it was too good to be true, then that,
Probably is.
especially if you're risk avoidant, don't go with the ones that are like, hey, it seems like it's too good to be true.
Yep. Yep. That's definitely read those reviews. So on the debt side, then credit cards. So this is an area that this credit card debt is the debt that I would focus on first. If you have multiple types of debt, if you have student loans or your kids' student loans, or if you have a mortgage or a car loan and credit cards, the credit cards almost always are going to have the highest interest, and they can go up to almost basically 30%. They don't call it 30% because it's 29.99. Let's just call it what it is. It's basically 30%. And if you have a balance in that account at 29%, every 2.5 years, it's doubling. It's going to double every 2.5 years. It's going to double again. The minimum payments aren't going to get you out of it, like, ever. And so it's one of those things where you definitely want to have a strong focus on any kind of credit card debt. And like we talked about, have an amount that's going to go to your emergency fund if that needs to get built up, but then be so aggressive on any kind of credit card debt, because otherwise that can just continue to compound and compound and compound and make it harder and harder to get out of. And I'm sure, and many of us have been there, where we bought, like, in my 20s, I went into Victoria's Secret and I thought, oh, if you open a credit card, right, and put your purchase on the credit card, and they had like 5 for $25. And then I never got around to paying the bill because I never used the credit card and didn't pay attention to it. And I ended up paying like $70 with all the interest for those 5 pair of underwear. That was $25. Like, I look back on that and I think, how ridiculous was that, right? But it was, I know that that's one of those things. That's why they do it, right? That's why they offer those things. So it's one of those things where just try to get it paid off as quickly as possible. There's 2 main strategies. One is if you have multiple accounts. If you're like Shannon and you like to gamify things, you can maybe go for the lowest balance first, because then you'll see those results faster.
Right.
But if you like to look at, well, what's going to save me the most interest, then go for the highest interest rate first and pay as much towards that one and pay the minimums towards everything else. And that's the same strategy if you go over the lowest balance. Pay as much towards that one, pay the minimum towards everything else until you knock them out one by one by one. So that is what I would do for debt. Just really focus on any credit card debt and then go from there, right? And then look at what other interest do you have out there on debt, and attack the ones that, especially if you can, that have the highest interest, because those are the ones that will compound faster.
Right. Well, Cassandra, we have about 5 minutes. So if anyone
Where does the time go?
I know. If anyone has any questions, feel free to either, you can either put it in the chat, or you can go ahead and raise your hand if you want to turn on your camera and let us know anything, or we can go ahead and just turn on your mic if there's anything that we want to cover. While people are preparing for that, if they do have any questions, it's always good, again, to go back to what we started with, is wherever you are, just pick something, like
Mm-hmm.
something to do first. And then you'd be surprised how that habit can continue to grow.
Yeah. It's Newton's law of motion, right? You have to just get into the motion. Just start the process. Just go start in the direction. And you don't have to know how you're going to get there. But
Right.
just start, do something. Take the first steps. And that gives you the feeling of you're accomplishing something, and then you feel good about it, and then you'll do the next thing, and you'll do the next thing, and things will start to become clear as you go down the path.
And I just wanted to share with everyone the Savvy Ladies free financial helpline. So feel free to come to the helpline and submit your question to get matched with a financial professional, where you can ask that question in total confidence, and the financial professional will give you the advice and guidance and answer your questions. It could be on a term, it could be on a definition, it could be what should be your next step. It's just what is your next step to move forward to, if it is building that budget, paying down debt, which credit card you should pay first. If that's a question, please come to the helpline and submit your question.
Right.
It's available, it's an online, and then we'll match you based on how you want to connect via email, phone, or virtual. So thank you everyone for joining us today. And Cassandra and Shannon, you guys were amazing.
And we'll be back,
any
what, in
final
2 weeks
questions?
from now? We'll be
Yeah.
back again. Mm-hmm.
It was
So
a pleasure. Thank you, Judy.
Oh my gosh, you guys were amazing. Any questions here? I'm looking through the chat at the very
The
end.
one I see is, what are good craft cards to build your credit, I think is what they mean, to build your credit with as far as interest. So what are some good credit cards? I think that, because we do talk about building credit, and I talk about it with some of my mortgage professional friends.
Mhm.
I really think that you should talk about that specifically with someone, because credit cards are a tricky slope. Like, they're a tricky slope, because you do want to build your credit, but there might be some other ways to build your credit that are less slippery of a slope. Because it depends on what you're trying to get your credit to do, is the short answer. So if you're trying to get your credit and build it so that you can qualify for a mortgage or qualify for that, speaking to an advisor that's very specific to what you're trying to get your credit up for, because a lot of times it's using a credit the right way, but it's also, how long did you have the credit card account? How long? Like, so there's a lot of background information on what that credit card might do for you, versus, is it going to put you back in a situation where you're using it in a way that's not benefiting you, and not really the quickest way to build your credit.
I love that answer. It's a great answer.
Yeah.
And somebody asked about a Chime account. I thought isn't Chime one of those ones where, as you spend, it helps squirrel away money for you. So we can look that up and get back to you as well. Because I haven't used it, but I've talked to people who've used them before, and I think that's what it is. So if we can look into that, and then we'll make sure that that's one of the ones that you can submit to the website, and then we can get that information back to you, because there are a number of those, like Acorns and some other accounts out there, that as you spend, they take the change and they put it away in a savings account. A lot of financial institutions have that available for you as well. So your bank or your credit union might have that option, so that you don't have to open a new account. They might just go, oh yeah, we can turn that on, or we can open, thing, like, I know my credit union did that a few years ago, where they're like, hey, do you want everything that they round up, they throw in my savings account anytime I use that. So that is an option out there. So I would suggest you check with your financial institution and see if it's one for you.
Excellent.
Yep.
Well, thank
Great.
you again. Everyone, have a lovely rest of your day.
And are you going to send this out to everybody, Judy?
Yes, so that is a big question. We will be sending the recording out. So if you're registered, you will get a copy.
All right. Well, thank you
Excellent.
all very much for joining us. I hope the
Thanks,
rest of your week goes
everyone.
well. So bye,
Wonderful
everyone.
to be with you. Bye-bye.